We're going to call this Reedsport Legal, episode 87. Irish Protestants trust in God, not our government, and we really know how to protest.
Of the conspiracies out there and think to yourself, have we just been duped on everything, and are they just feeding off of our emotions at a grand scale? I mean, look at the media today, the sporting events that take place, how much energy is put out into some sporting events as well. It's just, it's incredible.
Yeah, it sounds endless at the moment. Like, it's like, I can remember growing up here, you'd have soccer or rugby, would be sports people watch here, on a Saturday and a Sunday, right? That'd be it. On the TV. Now it's on every night of the week. Every night of the week. It's just, this is a curfew. It's a passive curfew to keep them indoors, to keep them from socializing, to keep them from meeting, to keep them from having, it's a way of keeping a curfew. Things like, and again, this is a dark sorcery aspect to it. These things like Pokemon Go, where people are like, grown adults are running around like clowns chasing these Pokemons with their mobile devices. That's a curfew. That's also a data gathering thing, but it's also, they're laughing at people when they see them doing that. I laugh at them too, but that's literally what X Factor and all these things. People like Simon Cowell they're like almost like, you hear someone going on a horrible magician was like, he's a horrible man. Aleister Crowley was a horrible man because he did this and the other. Well, Simon Cowell is worse. He keeps millions of people indoors watching mediocrity and sitting there playing judge, jury, and executioner of people's lives and dreams, and he's considered a great guy. This is the kind of nonsense that goes on. People don't start looking at the world in more mature terms. Instead of looking for the sports on every night. Why is the sports on every night? Well, they want to keep me indoor and they don't want me to socialize. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. And ever since I saw the film Braveheart, I just came overnight huge fan of William Wallace, and whether or not the media spinned him the right way or the wrong way, in that movie, certainly the archetype of William Wallace is incredible. And I told you, I've got lineage in Ireland and Scotland, and I don't know a whole lot about Ireland trying to break free from England, essentially, but I know that there was a real close vote last year, right? Could you tell us about that, and what was your thought on that whole event?
Well, that was Scotland that were going for independence. Ireland is already independent, but most of Ireland is already independent. A small part in the north, so Northern Ireland belongs to the UK, is part of the UK. That was Scotland that vote was. And some people say it was rigged. Just about every Scottish person I know
right?
voted yes. And yet it still went through as a no. Again, they played on people's fears. They said things to people in Scotland like, oh, if you leave Great Britain, your economy will fall. Like the usual crap they play with people's minds, make them afraid of change or anything like this. And then they polarized the debate. They almost, as they normally do, they said, it's only Catholics in Scotland who want independence. The Protestants are fine. So they tried to stoke up sectarian issues like they did in Northern Ireland back in the day. And so, yeah, look, the only way anyone ever gets out of the British Empire is by war. The only reason Ireland won its freedom is because they started killing politicians and, going to war. That was the only reason we got it.
When was that?
1922. That was when the Irish War of Independence started in 1916. The British were gone by 1922. And it was just killing. It's just the only way to do it. We had some very clever people who said we just have to start killing basically politicians and stop shooting soldiers, and then we'll get the result. And instantaneously they did. They're perfectly happy to send their troops over to get killed, but when the politicians get a taste of their own medicine, they collapse very quickly.
It seems like Ireland has kind of been the red-headed stepchild for so many years to some of these, aristocratic globalists and it's really, there's so much history and amazing things that have came from Ireland. Have you noticed that as well? I mean, I look at the Native American cultures that have been systematically destroyed around the world, and it seems like Ireland is kind of in a class of its own also.
Yeah, we will never be. We don't. We're different. Like I was talking to an American friend the other day about there was a library closing around here. They're shutting down the libraries, and she said if there's an internet petition, I'll sign it. And I says no, we don't sign internet petitions petitions in Ireland. We go down and terrorize politicians in government buildings. We've got a phenomenal, and one of the things I really do appreciate about my country is the fact that we have a terrible distrust for government, even our own. We don't trust politicians. A couple of years ago here, they tried to bring in this, like, make us pay for drinking water, saying it was rare. I mean, it rains most of the year here. And we were already paying for water through different kind of regional taxes. And basically, the people literally took down the government. I mean, you had incredible demonstrations. It's just like, don't lie to us, don't treat us like fools. And there's something in the Irish disposition, wherever it comes from, that cannot be brought to respect politicians. It would just, and that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's like we distrust governments. Even our own, we distrust them. We just don't, we just cannot be controlled. I mean, Sigmund Freud said that the Irish were the only group in Europe that psychoanalysis wouldn't work on because we were different. I don't know what it is. I mean, we are different. I don't know what it is, but we are different. I mean, we're definitely a lot more freer than most of Europe. I mean, I travel all over Europe. I say the Mediterranean countries are quite free. So you Spain, Portugal, Italy, there's a lot of freedom in those places, Greece. When you go to Northern Europe, Scandinavia, they're such deeply controlled societies that when I get back, I was even in Switzerland the other day. When I get back to Ireland, I feel like I've entered freedom. People here are far more easygoing and free in their. They don't obey rules, to the point where they destroy their lives. They'll obey common sense rules, but they won't obey rules that just to be controlled for the sake of it. And I think that with the Icelandics have that as well, but they're half Irish anyway. But that's a good thing, and I think that was what the initial immigrants to America, and many of them were like Irish and Scottish, and even like English ones from the north of England, and they had that attitude as well. And it took a long time. That's where the American kind of spirit originally came from, was from that, and then that was kind of broken down by extreme forms of capitalism, and America had to become an empire and so on. But I mean that's a good thing, and I think that's the movie. Yeah, the archetype of Braveheart of William Wallace. They're very important things. We should never lose sight of them. In Australia, you have Ned Kelly, who was the outlaw there, and he's now a national hero there. He was like the one who stood up against the police, and these kinds of things. These are the things we have to reach into inside ourselves. We have to tap into these archetypes inside ourselves. It's like what James Joyce and Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell called the monomyth, that every day of your life you have to live like a hero. That if you survive another day in this psychopathic control grid where they bombard us with all kinds of dark magic powers, from endless sports to terrifying news stories to the latest virus that's going to kill us, to the end of the world is coming tomorrow. If you can survive that and be happy at the end of the day, well, you've won a victory against that. And there's no difference between that and taking out a sword and slaying them. You've done it on the most powerful level of all, on the level of the psyche. Because I've been saying forever that if there's such a thing as the Battle of Armageddon, it's going to take place in human consciousness. And the only way you can win any kind of war against a great superpower, and that's what we're up against, a gigantic dark magi superpower, is as insurgents, as in an underground guerrilla war. And that's the way you fight in your mind. You don't let them get in there. You don't wait for a great awakening or a
I'm half Native American Indian and half Irish Protestant. I live in Reedsport, Oregon. And if you live here, what did they do? Close down our library. What did they do? Charge us for water and charge us a tax for rain falling on the land? Become a protester. It's time to take Reedsport, Oregon back. It's time to take America back. Light and love. I really do care about you guys. And become protesters. That's all I can say. City council meeting tonight on, let's see, February 3rd. City council meeting tonight. Take care, guys.